started. We were going to start with Cara. Is Cara here?
I am here. Well, I wasn't aware.
Oh, different Cara,
okay,
Cara.
good.
But thank
That's
you so
good.
much.
That's
It's good to see you.
That.
So Cara's not here. I will come back to her. So we'll ask Zena to present now. And Zena's, well, maybe Zena, you can introduce who you are and who you work for and what you do. Thank you so much.
Okay, my name is Zena. And yeah, Alan's asked me to do a little presentation, 10 minutes, covering both Bodregan Housing Co-op and Llais with the Community Network for Wales. I'm going to try and share my screen, so let me just see if I can do that. Hang on a second. Alan, it says host as disabled screen sharing.
Okay, if I make you a co-host, let's see if that works.
Okay, so hopefully you can see that now. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to kick off with the Bodregan Housing Co-op. I'm one of the founding members of the cooperative. So just to start off, this is an aerial view of the co-op, which has which you can kind of see the big house here. This is actually the whole place is called Lodge Park, but we've named the co-op Bodregan, which is one of the old names associated with the location. And we believe it means high windy place, which makes sense because we're on the estuary and we get a lot of weather coming at us from the sea. We're surrounded by woodlands. We have so these are all NRW woodlands, so the Welsh Woodland Estate, and we have gardens and pasture and a little bit of woodland, about 3.5 acres. So it's an old hunting lodge. It's pretty old, 400 years, Georgian. It's had quite a colourful history, including involvement with the local silver mining industry. Oops. So to start off, we actually just a group of us kind of just took the risk, and we managed to scrape together the money to secure the property, and then we followed kind of permaculture principles to observe for a year to get to know the land and the building, and we worked together to come up with a plan for the space and to set up a fully mutual housing cooperative, and we achieved that last year. And we also got planning permission to divide the big building up into flats. We're really aware that it's a privilege having this space, and we've been doing some community outreach and events to get an idea of what the wider community might want from this space and how it can be used by other people. So just before lockdown, we began the work on the building to start splitting it into 3 flats and a large community space. And we are also very interested in making it as sustainable as possible, and we're going to be transitioning from LGP gas to ground source heat pumps, hopefully by March. So we started the work just before lockdown, and the lockdown itself has had quite a big impact on what we're doing. All of our members, we've currently got 6 adults and 3 children as part of the co-op, and we're all in temporary accommodation at the moment while the building work happens. So we're trying really hard to get that done. a really important part of our co-op is that we're a land and housing co-op. We've got a lot of interest in managing the woodlands, in developing the gardens, and in making it wildlife friendly. This year we've actually had quite a focus on growing. We've been part of the Plan Avoid response to the COVID crisis, and aiming to increase food security in the valley. So we had teams of volunteers, which they called the Land Army, coming and growing produce on our land here. We put that land over to it. So yeah, it's been really busy. We've been working really hard, and that's where we're at. We're hoping to put in a funding bid as well to develop more of the community aspects of the wider community aspects of the project. So that's a little introduction. I'm happy to talk more about that later if it comes up, about the co-op, but I'll move on to Llais y Goedwig now. So Llais y Goedwig is a members-led grassroots community woodland network, and we were established in 2008. We support and represent community woodland groups across Wales. So if you go into a community woodland, you might see a lot of different things, including events, gatherings. You might see some traditional crafts. You might see volunteers but maintaining paths. There are people running social enterprises. There could be education for a school. So that's kind of the aspect that you see, all these basically people in woodlands. But what makes a community woodland a woodland? A community woodland is a woodland that meets local needs, and it's deeply linked to its local community. And that's part of the reason that they're all different. So a local community could prioritise dog walking or firewood, fuel wood. They might need an educational site. And this is even more important during COVID, to have outdoor spaces that can provide that. They tend to be woodlands that both meet the needs of people and wildlife, and most groups are volunteer-led, so they can do that management. They have that extra time that maybe a professional woodland manager doesn't have, to do that observation, the work and the engagement, and the time to do that sensitive woodland management. But the real core of community woodlands is that the community has some degree of control over how the woodland is run. So that's normally through a community woodland group that takes on the key tasks and the management of the woodland, but also is linked wider into the community and meets the needs of the community. And this is where I think it kind of overlaps a lot with community housing, that power to the people who actually are there, live there, and need that resource. And it's important to recognise that tenure is what allows this, because only a few community woodlands own their woodlands, but most have agreements with landowners, and they can be informal agreements, management agreements, or lease, and that really defines what a community woodland is able to do. And so that really key point, the local community being able to take decisions about what happens in the woodland. So as I said, we're a network organisation. We've got groups right across the whole of Wales. We've got 90 full members at the moment, so those are community woodland groups. And we have over 350 associate members who are supporters of what we do. At the moment, we've got, we're really lucky to have 3 years funding through the Welsh Government Enabling Resources and Wellbeing Fund. And that has meant that we can have more staff at the moment. So Llais y Goedwig kind of goes through ebbs and flows. At the moment, we do have funding to do direct support with groups right across Wales. And we have development officers in each of the areas. In fact, Cara's here, who also works for Llais y Goedwig. She's the development officer for the southwest area.
And Liz as well is here.
Oh, is Liz here as well? Yeah, Liz covers Mid Wales, so we've got a good representation there. But for all the amazing things that Community Woodlands do, there's also a lot of challenges. And Llais Coedwig is set up to support groups with these challenges, as well as to achieve their aims. So Llais Coedwig was set up in 2008 to promote and represent community woodland groups in Wales, and to provide assistance and support to local community woodland groups and initiatives. And we do this through networking, so supporting groups to talk to each other and with different agencies and organisations across Wales. It's really key to what we do is sharing knowledge and experience and problem solving between ourselves. We develop resources on all aspects of setting up and managing community woodlands. These are free to access on our website. And we also do other projects, such as, at the moment, we've got the Dewis Gwyll project, the Wild Choice, which is about generating income from non-wood forest products. We aim to raise the profile of community woodland groups within the woodland community, but also wider in the general public. So we attend lots of events such as Woodfest, Anglesey Woodland Festival, Royal Welsh Show and the Eisteddfod. And we try and give a voice to community woodlands at a policy level as well, by entering into dialogue with decision makers across Wales. And that's a very quick introduction to both of the projects. Here's a bit of shameless promotion. We've got our Llais Coedwig gathering coming up next month, and if you want to know more about community woodlands and woodlands in general, and community, come along. It's the 12th, 13th and 14th of November. There's my contact details. Do get in touch if you're interested and if you want to come along. And that's that. I will just.
Thank you so much, Zena, for that great introduction to both projects. And please, everybody, if you've got a question for Zena, and then pop it into the chat, and we will come back to it later. Or you'll have an opportunity to raise your hand at the end and speak for yourself as well, if you prefer to do that. Cara has been kind of coming in and out of the meeting. I'm not sure, are you in? Yes, Cara, there you are. Great. Good to see you. Thanks so much for coming. And Cara is a current resident of Undergrowth Housing Co-op, and she's going to talk to you for 10 minutes or so about the woodland that they've been growing there for the last 35 years. Thank you, Cara. You're unable to share your screen. You should be, but give us a shout if there's an issue.
Great, thanks, Alan, and hi, everybody. I'm just going to share my, it says host is disabled participant screen sharing. Enable me, Alan.
Sorry, I've enabled you now. Try again.
That's it. Share. Share screen. Share. Okay. Can everybody see a thing that says Undergrowth Housing Co-op? Yeah.
Yes,
great.
we can.
Right, let me just minimize my face because that is distracting. Yeah, give me a shout if I'm going over time. So yeah, I hoped that Dan would be joining me as well, but we're having part of the joy of off-grid living is that sometimes everything breaks at the same time and the weather isn't in your favour. I'm actually in Pennell, in the land of power and internet. But so I think it's just me. So Undergrowth Housing Co-op is more commonly known as Done In. And this is an aerial shot of it. Dunning is the name of the river, which is the house and the land around it are named after the Nant Dunning. Oh, why can't I? That's it. Okay, so this is what Dunning looked like in 1971. This is when it was still a operational sheep farm, and you can see that surrounding the buildings, it's mostly grass. It's obviously sort of grazing pasture, and there are a few trees around the house, but not that many. And so in 1986, the initial deposit for the house was raised by loan stock. The story goes that a bunch of people from CAT went up there, and it was all sort of, oh God, sorry, phone ringing. It was all abandoned and no one was living there. And so they sent a small child through one of the windows to go and check it out inside, and decided to buy it. Raised the money by loan stock. That was just for the house. I think for the buildings as well, the outbuildings as well. And then 4 years later, remortgaged the house to buy 18 acres surrounding it from the farmer who they bought the house off. And planted it up with a grant from Coed Cymru, and I'll come on to that in a minute. And then 6 years later, an additional 4 acres, a large field, was bought with loan stock. And then just recently, last year, coming into this year, we've remortgaged again, and we're upgrading the off-grid system. So we're adding solar to the existing hydro. I should say as well that I've only been there for like 4 years, I think. And obviously it's been going since I was 3 years old. So I can speak from secondhand stories from other people and my experience of living there. And but yeah, I don't know if any other Dunning residents are going to join us, but there are some people that are there that have been there for on and off for 10 years. So just briefly, back then, sorry, this is a horrible slide. Back then, they renovated the house and the buildings. They created a dam to make a reservoir for the hydro system. They set up all the electrics in the house. They made water filters, getting everything set up, acquiring the lands, I've said, veg growing, tree planting, some pretty epic parties, which I have to say I never went to myself, but pretty infamous parties in the field. Over many years, and communal living, and as I understand it, in more recent years, before I moved in, there was breakdown in the community, and it was split into self-contained flats, and I think in the lack of that sort of communal spirit, it sort of fell into a bit of disrepair. It was quite run down when I moved there, and it just needed some love, really. And Sarah, who had been there for a long time, she was the only person left when the other people, the other last people kind of moved out. It was really her initiative to turn it back into communal living. It went from self-contained flats back into a sort of communal situation, and people moved in. Thanks to Sarah, and so now we are living communally again. We're sort of putting a lot of love into the place, like restoring and regenerating. We've got 22 acres in total, 7 humans, 3 dogs and 3 chickens. There were 4 chickens, but because of the 3 dogs, there are now 3, well, because of one of the dogs. And yeah, we've got the off-grid power, we've got the hydro, and the new small solar array. We've got off-grid water and sewage. Lockdown has meant that we've been able to start some veg and fruit growing again. We're starting to manage the woodlands since last year, which I'll say more about. And next year is our 35th anniversary, which we were hoping to have an epic party for, but who knows in COVID world whether that will be possible. So specifically around the sort of trees and woodlands, as I said, the trees were planted in 1990. So it's 20 years ago that they were sorry, 30 years ago. My maths is awful, I'm sorry, I've just been told it's 30. And it's actually mentioned in George's Feral as a sort of early example of rewilding, like one of the first places to fence the grazers out and plant trees. And most of the trees that were planted were native, mostly broadleaves. So there's oak, birch, alder, sweet chestnut, lime, ash, aspen, beech, walnut, apple, bird cherry, hazel, Scots pine, Guelder rose. So yeah, it's a real mix. And you can actually see when I show you the drone footage that Dan's made, you know, it's in a sort of in a wider area where there's basically no trees, and then within the bounds of done-in land, there's lots and lots of trees. And because there's now a seed bank, a seed source, that's beginning to seed trees in the surrounding landscape. So the trees are starting to escape, if you like, and head out into the broader landscape. And then since last year, or possibly the year before, I've started doing some very low level planting of just kind of like fairly random, like nothing very sort of focused, although like some areas of bracken I'm focusing on, but very sort of low level. Again, sort of like native broadleaves and a mulberry. And we're starting to I did the first thinning in of the sort of woodland area last year. So most of the land that we have is, apart from the field, obviously, it has scattered trees, and then there's like a couple of areas where it's what like actual woodland, you know, like closed canopy collection of trees all together as a wood. And so yeah, I did some thinning in there last year, and intend to carry on doing bits of that as is sort of needed. And we use that wood for firewood, for fence posts, general sort of use. There's, you know, from the fruit and nut trees we get food. There's I do a lot of foraging personally as well. I get loads of food from done-in land, mushrooms, berries, nuts. Also for crafts, so basket weaving, I do bark leather tanning, using willow bark, and hopefully in the future there might be a small amount of timber, though we're never going to get a sawmill up there, but it'd have to be a chainsaw mill, but we might be able to do a little bit of that. And because we have a friendly neighbour next door that allows us to just basically raid his larchwood that he doesn't really do anything with, we're now, since like the last sort of couple of years, sort of self-sufficient for firewood, but because that land isn't ours, I can't really say that. But going forwards, we're hoping that you know, as we start to manage the woodlands, and we're doing more planting, which justifies, you know, more use, and you know, they need thinning in certain places. So we hope to be truly self-sufficient for firewood. I would like us to be anyway. That's sort of what I'm sort of trying to take us towards. And we're doing coppicing, and yeah, just continue sort of managing the woodlands. So I'm just going to share a few photos so you can get a sense of like before and after. So this is there's a couple of big apple trees, crab apple trees there you can see, which are actually still there. One recently blew down, but there's basically not really any trees there, and that area is now covered in trees. This is the reservoir here, and so the next photo I'm going to show you is taken from where those two people are stood, pretty much. This is Dan, about to jump into the empty but mud-filled reservoir, and you can see him behind them. There's, yeah, you can get a sense of yeah, the trees and vegetation behind. This is taken sort of back in the day, looking down towards the house, and that the larchwood that I mentioned from the neighbour is there in the distance. The next photo I'm going to show you is taken from sort of, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but sort of down here, kind of further down the hill, looking back up towards where this photo was taken, and that's what it looks like. So it's a really like incredible change. This is the view from the bathroom window between 2002 2018. You can see it's all shot up. And this is what the woodland looks like now. So yeah, the actual sort of woods. It's 30 years old, mixture of oak and lime and beech and all sorts of things. That's kind of where they're at now. Just to give you a bit of a sense, this is Dan. This is on a course that I ran there a couple of years ago. There's all sorts of things happening. And then just to finish, then there's a drone video I'd like to share with you, which Dan has posted on the Friends of Dunnin Facebook page. But I just wanted to point out like the comment there underneath of someone who obviously been to a lot of Dunnin parties saying, I remember feeling like that at Dunnin. Pretty spaced out. Let me find the video then, and I'll show you what they mean by that. Facebook, go. So this is the house, and you can see to the left of the house there, that's the woods, and then scattered trees everywhere else. Unfortunately, the roof has come off one of the barn buildings there on the left. So this area of bracken down on the bottom right, I'm planting that up at the moment with oak and various things. And you can see, so all of the trees there, this is still largely within our boundaries and heading up the river. All of the trees there you can see, and you can see our fence line on the right there as well, and the trees inside and not trees outside. There's the reservoir. You can see, the boundary goes up, sweeps around the left up the hill there, and there's less trees at the top because obviously the soil's thinner and they've taken less well. They're sort of stunted little oaks. Another area of sort of focused birch and oak woodland there just above the reservoir. Where's the waterfall? So I think, where are we? So I think that line that you can see across the top of the screen there, I think that's the top boundary of our land. Somewhere in there, in those trees at the bottom there, is our own beautiful private waterfall, which is pretty epic. So yeah, now you're seeing the sort of the surrounding landscape, and you can see it's heather moorland. It's there's a lot of kind of it's basically moorland. It's kind of rewilding in a sense, in that like it hasn't been managed for the last 20 years. But you can see here, this is a better shot. You can see there's a lot of like millennia domination, purple moor grass. And then there's forestry there over to the left, but most of the landscape around, there's not a lot of trees. It is. Yeah. Am I running out of time?
We should probably end it there, but it looks fantastic.
Yeah, that's the end of the video. So that's perfect. Great.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cara. That's really inspiring to see what's been happening at the co-op over all that time, and how successive memberships of the co-op can manage the woodland over time as well. It adds an interesting dimension to the passing on the heritage of the woodland to other people. So we've got like 10 minutes of breakout now, and I will arrange the breakout rooms and send you all in there with a guided question, which I'll put in the chat. I mean, obviously, you can use the breakout rooms to open up discussions about anything you want to do with the subject. It's all going to be randomized, and we'll send you off there, and you'll just meet with a smaller group of people. If you haven't done breakout rooms before, have a chat for 10 minutes and then come back into the main room, and we'll carry on with the next presenters. Casey, while I do this, do you want to say a bit more about what's going to be happening in the next next monthly network meetings? Sorry to put you on the spot a bit, but this might take a little moment for me to sort out.
That's fine, of course, yeah. Well, we've actually got a planning meeting tomorrow to discuss our next monthly network meeting, but we are thinking that it's going to be on the world of planning. So quite a complicated subject, but we've got a really exciting guide that we've produced with Planning Aid Wales to help community-led housing groups to navigate the planning system. So hopefully we're going to do a bit of a launch of that next month. So anybody interested in the world of planning and sort of anybody who's actually going through that process of planning with their community-led housing scheme, that would be a really useful session for you to join. And hopefully, as then the following network will be December, we're hoping to have a little festive celebration with everybody, and maybe do a little bit of a Christmas quiz. Dave Palmer is king of Christmas quizzes at the Wales Cooperative Centre, so we might get him on board in a Santa suit, seen as though he's got the beard this year. So that's hopefully what we've got to look forward to over the next coming months.
Brilliant, thanks Casey. And now we're ready to go, or we should be. If anybody has a problem, you can communicate with me from the room. Yeah, so just call me to the room. This is 10 minutes, and then there'll be a warning up 30 seconds before the end of the meeting. The breakout room will finish and you'll come back to the main room. So I'll open the rooms now. And oh, the guided question, sorry, is how can we strengthen the link between community housing and woodland? Yeah, feel free to talk about that or anything you would like. And if you happen to have some of the speakers in the room, you might obviously want to ask them questions too. Okay, see you in 10 minutes. Kath and Phil, you're in the main room with me still. Are you having problems getting to the breakout rooms? We'll just wait until everybody comes back in the room. Just some more people coming back into the main room now. All the rooms are closing and everybody should be with us very shortly, so we can proceed with the second part of the webinar. So I wanted to invite some speakers who are working at kind of various different levels of the woodland sector in Wales. And we've got 3 speakers who are kind of participating in very different ways, but I'll let them introduce themselves, or at least introduce what they do. We've got Jamie Miller from Tipren, Gary Newman from Wood Knowledge Wales, and Steve Pickup, who's kind of one of the UK's leading experts on growing and using willow. First of all, Jamie, if you're back in the room, whether you're up for talking first about Tipren and your work with that organisation. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Do I need to, am I on that one there? Okay. Just screen share on that. Oh, no, blank that off. You'll have to excuse me. This is the first time I've been on here. And I need to get rid of that. Stop share. Okay. I was going to try and save some photographs, but my computer says no. So can everyone hear me?
Jamie?
Was it?
Yeah, we could see them, but
all right. Well, yeah. So I'm Jamie Miller from Tipren. So we're a roundwood timber framing company just outside of Lampeter. We formed about 6 years ago as a worker cooperative. But I've been a natural builder for nearly 20 years now, and sort of had a quite close relationship with Woodlands. In 2003, I did a traditional rural skills apprenticeship with Coppicewood College down in Cardigan, and came out of that doing hedge laying, woodland management, but I was always interested in building, and sort of the ultimate thing I think you can do with a lot of wood is to construct something quite large. One of the main things we're interested in is, well, we tick quite a lot of boxes, really. I'll give you a brief sort of rundown of what we did. So I, as part of the Longwood Community Woodland group, I was commissioned to build a visitor centre. And sort of coming out of that, I wanted to form a company, which was Tipren. But what we were looking at closely was diversification of woodland, of timber within that and its use, and to have added value to that timber. And one of those ways is to use it in the round. So round wood has upwards of 50% more strength in it. It can be harvested a lot earlier and utilised within buildings for quite a good structural strength. But this type of timber is not widely used. I mean, the type of timber that we're using has no inherent value other than fence posts or even firewood. It's usually about 30 years old, so it's halfway through its life in terms of what it would be used for a sawmill. And the techniques that we've developed over the years mean that we're now creating houses under the One Planet development policy, and we meet the criteria for their low impact standards. We use hand tool construction. The woodlands that we work in is actually a private wood owner that we approached initially to say, could we buy timber off him for building? But what it turns out, he was quite interested in us setting up some kind of activities within the wood and do that management. Because up until that point, a lot of small woodlands have only got the options of clear felling and sort of really dealing with the big boys, if you like, in terms of timber stock and sales and things like that. And Graham, who's the woodland owner that we were working with, he was looking for something different because you just don't make a lot of money. I mean, even before, if you're selling off a sort of a plot of woodland and stock, you've got to think about transportation, the tracks, the roads, and it costs tens of thousands of pounds just to get in there to extract the timber. And then there's a huge, great mess afterwards, which you've got to clean up. And that again costs tens of thousands of pounds to clean up before replanting. So one way that we're looking at it as well as a company is that we were very keen that the materials that we're using, we went right back to see how they were actually produced. So part of our building is actually management of the woodland. So we go in and we thin out within a standing larch woodland, take the poles we want, creating glades, sort of felling, which opens up the woodland to other biodiversity, so species of butterfly and birds and things like that can go in, and then the timber that we're leaving remains to grow on for sawmill purposes. This diversifies the Welsh timber. It's giving added value to the timber. It's a different route than other than clear fell. We've got quite a lot of diseases in the woods at the moment, especially with the larch and the phytophthora. So we have a management policy where we're spotting those, we're taking them out. There's nothing wrong with the timber. The disease is actually in the bark and the brash. But currently the rule is that if you do find infected larch within a woodland, then you must clear fell 100-meter radius around that tree, which I don't necessarily agree with that policy, because I think we should cut down the infected tree and actually monitor the trees around it and allow natural immunity to build, which is what many people in organizations in Europe are doing. But at the moment, a lot of woodland is being felled just to go for wood chip for biomass, which is well, criminal, I think is one way I'd put it. What we're looking at is right back to how we can utilize that wood. And as I say, we've been quite successful in building a number of houses now for One Planet developments, community buildings, roundhouses, cabins, anything basically that you could build a wooden frame out of. And what we're finding is that there's knock-on effects for the way that we're building as well. So we're actively sort of searching for other community woodlands that we can purchase timber off them for. And as a worker cooperative, we are investing in our staff. So we pay the crew that we have in, we're paying more than minimum wage. We work a 4-day week. That includes management, so there's training within that as well. So the benefits in terms of this whole sort of green economy that we're creating by building increases skills, also has mental health benefits, not only for the people that are working with us, but also for the homes that we're building, because we're using that natural materials like straw, clay, lime, wood, stone. So people have a greater relationship with those. So it's not just a breeze block house that they're going into. We use very little cement or in our construction. I think the most we have is in foundations. I'll try and pull up these photos again. Where are they? I think they're on there. Oops, is that the right one? No. Can people see these? Sorry,
We can see them.
Yes, see those.
We can see them as small photographs. If
right,
you double click on them, do they open up?
No, that one. What about that one? Is that better?
No, you can just see them. You'll probably have to open the images separately off screen share, and then
I get you. Let's have a look. All right.
If you go to the top of your screen, there should be a stop share function.
Okay.
There we go. And now open the images separately outside the share.
Okay.
And then once they're open, you can share again.
Okay. Share that. Is that better?
Yes, brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, so there's just a few images here I'll go through. So this is obviously a finished interior for the bathroom of a house that we did, but you can see the roundwood frame within there. And this is straw bale, clay and lime rendering. There's a kitchen in there. So this is the type of frame. This was a project for Fordhall Farm community, just over the borders, that we built on that one. So this is as part of our management. We're sort of felling in there. So we're giving skills training as well. Everyone's got the chainsaw ticket, first aid, forestry, anything else that we need sort of pertaining to that, trailer licenses. Sort of the methods that we're using, very traditional. They're based on Amish, Quaker, Shaker joinery. But roundwood, there's only a few. I think there's only a few people really in the country that are sort of using roundwood. It's a lot. You've got to learn how to sort of handle it and deal with it and see the straight lines in it. It's a lot different from square. It's similar, but three-dimensionally, it can be a bit of a head scratcher. But we've so as part of the One Planet development, we've built homes ranging from this one, which was sort of 7 meters by 11 meters. So it's like a single 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom house. That's about £15,000. This is an example of the foundations that we use. So car time foundations with dry stone foundations underneath. There were, let me find another one. So the methods we're using for construction, a gym pole, so all hand tool and people power. Interiors, normal stud ring. You see the straw bale that's in there as well. And then anything up to this one, this is one of the largest houses we've built, which is a three-bedroom house. But that was still, I think it was £26,000 for that. But but all the timber here came from our woodlands. So the roundwood was basically what we went and selected to make the framing, and then all the sawn timber came from larger stock within the woodlands of Douglas fir that was produced on the sawmill. So we're creating that local economics and sort of keeping the money within a small area to promote the stability for economics in the area. But we're definitely involved in sort of empowering people for small build, for self builds. And community projects. If I can go back to that one, I can see people. That's better. So yeah, we're actively involved in trying to make a bit of a green revolution in building, basically. Because this type, we've got expansion, we've got a housing crisis. We've got expansion of dwellings into greenbelt and into the countryside, and these types of methods could be applied across the board in terms of social housing, any community building, municipal buildings that need to be constructed, and we think and we want to be part of that conversation, because at the moment it's not OPD, especially One Planet development. If nobody's aware of it, it's not really advertised as a planning policy much. And I think in the last 10 years, there's only been 42 successful applications. Now, there's a lot of stipulations with that in terms of self-sufficiency and things like that, but the local development plans are actually up for renewal next year. And we're looking to try and expand on those to say that anybody can build this way if it's sympathetic to the landscape, and that permacultural approach to housing that you can have. Our houses that we produce are actually carbon negative, because there's very little, there's hardly machinery. There's probably the transport costs to get it to the site. That's about it. Everything else is done by hand. And I should just say, I've just noticed recently that there's now government-backed mortgages to build zero carbon homes that have just been released by the Welsh Senedd. So as a building company, we're quite keen to sort of be in part of that conversation. And I know we've got some other people on here. I know it's Mark is up there as well. He's another green builder who's based up in Mac. And we, as a company, we're trying to develop a syndicate of natural green builders in Wales to be able to facilitate cooperation with community woodlands, small woodland owners, and other people within that sort of green building market to be able to provide housing and whatever building constructs that the people need. So yeah, that's sort of, I think that's a roundabout way of saying what we're doing with Longwood. With T-Pen. And I mentioned before on the chat rooms that I'm also a director of Longwood, which is a community woodland based in Lampeter. So I'm very much aware of what's involved in community woodlands, but also in terms of finding markets and finding that balance between those markets and the natural environment, and how we can sustain both of them without being detrimental to either. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Jamie. There's so many good things to talk about there. I'm going to move to our next speaker, who's the CEO of Wood Knowledge Wales. Gary, would you like to introduce yourself and what it is that you do? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a bit of a new adventure for me. I think I'm probably going to learn more than you'll learn from me, but there we go. I'm going to try and share my screen. I got a little PowerPoint, and I am aware that we're running late as well. So where's the screen share there? Okay. Yeah, so I'm a construction engineer, actually. Always been into sustainability. I'm also a wood scientist, although I didn't study it for long. And I also have a background in hemp and flax processing in North Wales. I'm based in Bangor, so always been into sustainability. I'm one of the founders and chair of the Alliance for Sustainable Building Products, which is run out of London, which has members all across all the different material sectors, including the hemp and limes and the straw bales and things like that. Wood Knowledge Wales, which I run, I suppose I got involved 4 years ago. It was a sort of dying publicly funded organisation, or public funding ceased, and so we've turned it into a member funded organisation. And when I sort of picked it up, I saw two what I thought were the fantastic opportunities. One was to encourage social housing in the area of timber, not just for the frame, but also for the insulation and internals, and also homegrown timber, and also the self-procured market. And I suppose of which co-housing is one, and I suppose it was the excitement that was created in the social housing that's drawn us into almost exclusively into that area. The self-procured market is appallingly underdeveloped in Wales across all types of construction in terms of ownership. I mean, self-build, co-housing, and another form which I can't remember the name of, but there are lots of different models, and we don't do much of it in Wales unless you happen to be wealthy, and it's a massively underdeveloped area, and I think it's an area that could massively stimulate forestry, woodland creation, and processing of timber into high value markets. So I'm going to try and move on pretty quickly. So we're a membership organisation. We've got probably the vast majority of the housing associations in Wales as members. They do build one out of every 3 houses in Wales, so they have a significant market pull. But you've also got timber framers in here, medium-sized sawmills, and the like. I should say our kind of mission is Wales as a high-value forest nation. Most countries in Europe, where forestry is a logical thing to do with the land, they have forestry. Wales is relatively unusual in that it doesn't. It's currently a grazing nation and a steel nation, actually. So what do I mean by a high-value forest nation? That's more trees, more timber products, more adding value, more wood culture, more high-performance homes made from timber, and actually more people with an interest in trees, social, environmental, and critically economic interest in trees. Even though NRW own most of the productive forest in Wales, I don't think people feel necessarily that it's theirs, and that's a missed opportunity. So, you know this kind of stuff. We're the 3rd largest importer of timber in the world, sometimes the 2nd largest. We're massively undersupplied from our own resource. I'm I'm not an exclusive lover of Sitka, but I'm not a Sitka knocker either, because I think it has its place. Wales is a deforested nation. Other European countries aren't. But Wales is a great place to grow trees. There's a lot of talk about trees grow too fast, you can't do anything with them. But I mean, Jamie at T-Pren shows that actually it's an incredibly strong timber, particularly if you use it in the round. And I think the sort of round is a massively underdeveloped area as a material. And what I'd be interested in is, can we turn roundwood into more of a commodity material? That's a subject to have with Jamie offline. But Wales is a great place to grow trees, and well-conceived forestry does all these fantastic things. So we know all of that. So we run Woodbuild at Woodbuild last year. The fantastic Julie James gave us this quote: very committed to developing the timber industry in Wales. Let's face it, Wales puts in about 300 million a year into farm subsidies and 1 million into forestry, although that has gone up recently. So there needs to be a huge cultural shift for Wales. Just want to tell you a little bit about one of the big projects we're working on, which is the Homegrown Homes project in collaboration with social housing providers. We've developed a net zero carbon infographic, which shows how that can be delivered. And let's face it, Wales has to deliver this at scale in the next, well, you could say 10 years. And these are the main features of that. I don't tend to go into the detail now, but for sure you have to measure it and prove it. Particularly in social housing, it's a large regulated government funded market, and therefore being able to measure and prove what you're doing is kind of a key component of that. We've developed a map where we've put on lots of the housing projects that we've worked on, not just encouraging the use of timber, but also measuring embodied carbon, whole life carbon, upfront carbon. These are the things that will come into regulation over the next 10 years. And also operational performance. So, so do the buildings work as designed? So we've developed all sorts of guidance around that. And this Google map is a kind of a bit of a go-to illustrator for us. We've developed embodied carbon reduction guidance. So building with wood is one of the best ways to do that. Building with local materials is another way to do that. Building with natural materials, but those aren't the only ways. Recycled materials, designing for deconstruction and redeployment. There are lots of methods. We've developed client sheets that helps building performance evaluation that help clients to make sure that they get the house that they want, rather than told that it's what they asked for by the builder. And the net zero guide we've developed for Welsh Government, which is a kind of standardized mechanism for closed panel wood fibre insulated social housing. We've also explored the problems associated with conventional open panel timber frame and come up with a kind of guide as to how to avoid those pitfalls. Created specification tools. Last week we launched a report written by the Foundational Economy Research Limited, a sort of godfather of the foundational economy, Carol Williams. So we launched that last week, and we're running 2 webinars on it. There's lots of other outputs as well, in terms of a case for housing associations to invest in forestry, guide to offsetting. It's got a bad name, it's not always good, but it sometimes is. Webinars, running them all the time, recommend them. Podcasts, we've started producing podcasts. Please do download those. And that's me. I hope I didn't go on too long. There we are.
That was perfect, Gary. Thank you so much for, and I appreciate your speed in delivering that, which is surely a much bigger presentation. But please, anybody, if they want to get in touch with Gary, I know he'll be happy to carry on conversations around any of the things he's brought up, and all the resources are there on the website to look at. We have got some questions coming in the chat, but I'm going to move on to our final speaker now, who is Steve Pickup, who is one of, as I said at the beginning, one of the UK's leading experts in growing and using willow. And I invited Steve along. I thought willow would be a great kind of woodland product that community groups might want to investigate and tap into. So Steve, if you're there, if you'd like to come online.
Hi. Can you?
Brilliant.
Me?
We can see you, Steve. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I've unmuted my mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Hi. My name is Steve. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about willow, and I actually have a question here that I was given by Alan. Could willow be a useful crop for land-based community housing projects? I believe it can in some cases, but that's really going to be up to people involved in the housing projects. I'll tell you a little bit about willow. First of all, I'll just give you some background information on willow. It's native to all of the northern temperate zone all around the world, and fairly ubiquitous as well. It occurs virtually everywhere in the northern temperate zone. So very, very common tree. It's extremely tough. It's very adaptable. It's fast growing and high yielding. Willow grows further north in the Arctic tundra than any other plant in the whole world. So that's pretty tough. There are species in this country, Viminalis in particular, that will grow at very high altitudes. They'll grow by the coast in salt-laden winds. They can grow happily on compacted soil, polluted soil, tolerant of excessively wet soil, even dry conditions. Sometimes they will tolerate. So a very adaptable plant, and can be grown in a very, very wide range of locations. A fun fact about willow is before the invention of cardboard and plastic, which we take for granted now, virtually everything that was stored or transported would have been stored or transported in willow boxes made of willow, or baskets as they're commonly called. Animals were even caught in willow, salmon, eels, etc. And the willow baskets were even used as measuring devices. So very, very, very wide range of uses which willow was put to. Can it be useful for a housing project? Well, it can increase biodiversity, for one thing, which is a good thing. Over 300 species of insects are associated with willow, similar to oak. Provide shelter, even at very high altitude. We supply a lot of willow to farms, small holdings in Wales, Scotland, the Pennines, even the Shetland Islands and the Outer Hebrides. You can produce useful products, whether that is bean poles for growing your veg, den building. Very useful thing, den building, especially for community housing projects. The needs of children are often neglected in various types of projects, and having a source of den building material is quite a useful thing, and quite a different thing to something like a swing or a slide or a more conventional type of play structure. Just having a little copse of willow where children can go and cut a few lengths of poles, maybe 10 foot, 12 foot long, and make dens. That's something that's often overlooked. Can even be a cash crop. You can grow willow, you can sell it as a cash crop. We buy in willow ourselves from other people who grow willow. We'll even come and harvest the willow, and we'll pay something in the region of £200 a tonne for the willow. So for One Planet development, that can be quite useful. if you're looking for a cash crop to justify building your dwelling on the land. And firewood, very, very useful for firewood. And yeah, in fact, you can grow a huge amount of firewood. I'm just going to show you, I'm going to try and do a screen share now and carry on with some pictures. I'm getting a message, Alan, that screen sharing has been disabled. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Steve. Yes, I will make you a co-host and then you can do it.
Okay.
I should be able to do it now.
Okay, I'm going to try that now. Yeah, so I'll try the first one. So can everyone see that picture? Is that yes?
Yes, we can. Yes,
Yeah,
I see it.
great, great. Okay, so yeah, it's not quite a proper woodland, but it is a woody plant or a tree or a shrub. And one willow plant can produce about 20 kilos of fresh wood or 10 kilos of dry season wood per plant every 5 years. So that's a willow plant growing on roughly a square meter of ground. So if you translate that, if you scale that up, that is equivalent. So if you grow a willow copse of say 100 plants on 100 square meters, which is a square of ground 10 meters by 10 meters, which is not that big, you can grow a ton of dried willow on that patch of ground every 5 years. If you grow 5 copses, so 500 square meters, you can harvest it on a 5-year coppice cycle, then you can produce 1 ton of dried wood every year, and so on and so on. So this is how you start. Basically, you grow from willow cuttings. You don't need to dig the ground. You don't even need to fertilize the ground. Here we've used a weed mat to control the weeds. Weed control is a very important factor for growing willow. So here we are. These are 3-foot long cuttings. So this is going to be grown as a willow pollarded copse. And if you look at the bottom plant, the bottommost plant on your screen, at the top, you should be able to see there's a rabbit spiral, and just above the rabbit spiral is some willow shoots. Now that's what a newly planted willow plant looks like just a few weeks or a month or so after planting. So as you can see, they're very, very, very fast growing. Now I'll just see if I can remember how to go on to the next slide. I'm going to delete. Yes, I think that's worked.
Steve, we've probably just got time for one more slide. Sorry.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Talking too much. Yeah, okay, so I'll just go on to a different one in that case. Yeah, so here is willow firewood after 5 years. And yeah, so as I was saying, you can grow quite a lot of firewood in a small area of ground, roughly one ton every 5 years from an area just 100 square meters. Is that okay?
That's fantastic, Steve, and sorry to rush you at the end, but we're coming up to the end of our time now together. I am really happy to carry on talking or hosting the meeting beyond the 1:30 cutoff if people would like to do that. But I understand everybody probably also has to get on and make lunch and continue with their afternoons. whatever they have planned. So yeah, sorry there hasn't been time for another breakout session, and we got like a couple of minutes for questions and answers, we can do those, and then if people feel like carrying on beyond the time, then we can also do that. But obviously our speakers probably have to go as well and get on with their day. But we had a question, a question from Elizabeth for Gary, which was around how can the timber framing market be sustained, grow, if the dominant forest companies are obsessed by their fast-growing spruce for paper? That's a big question, Gary, for you.
Yeah. So I don't think it's either or. You know, I'm interested in changing all levels of Welsh housing, social housing, self-procured housing, even developer-led housing at some point, which is seems miles away from high quality, sustainable at the moment. So the barrier isn't the dominance of sawmills, because the barrier, if there is a barrier in Wales, is the dominance of sheep, beef and dairy as land use options. Sitka spruce has its place, as do all the other species. And if you look at the fantastic low carbon buildings in the cities, and let's not forget that's where most people live, opportunities there for cross laminated timber, glue laminated beams, those are all spruce and pine based construction systems. So it has its place. And the challenge in large regulated markets like the government funded housing market is the degree of regulation and the need for standardized systems and components. And that does tend to lead you to the larger sawmills. I think the opportunity in the self-build sector is fantastic for the medium and smaller processors. You know, so it's not one or the other, really. They all have their place. I don't know whether that answered the question, but that's my view.
Thanks, Gary. That's great. We've got a request from somebody if they can get hold of contacts. So if any of the speakers would like to put their contacts in the chat and are happy for people to contact them afterwards, or if you have a website or whatever, that would be great. So people can follow up the conversations going forward. We had a couple of points from Catherine. I don't know, Catherine, if you're still there, whether you'd like to talk about the point you made about the charter.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi. So it's not just me, actually. It's also Cara Wilson, who's also here, and a whole gang of us from all sorts of different organisations. A lot of us just doing our own thing, but we've got people like from Cymdeithas yr Iaith and from Gorau Gymru and lots of other organisations. And basically, it's really Cara and her partner's idea. We're calling it the Cartref Charter, the Homes Charter for Wales. And what we're looking at is rural communities, communities as a whole, but particularly rural communities like the one I come from in Aberdyfi. In Aberdyfi, we've got 75% holiday homes, and we've lost our school in the last few years. We've gone from a village of 2 primary schools and 100 children in my mother's time to no primary school and 5 children now in the whole village. So I very much want to try and start a community housing trust to regenerate the village. But the charter we're putting together is to be presented to potential Senedd members before the next election, and it's focusing on things like caps on holiday homes, planning laws, community, retaining our young people, and all those kind of things. So if anyone would like to know more, please do get in touch with myself or Cara. It's a really good group of people we're working with. So
we would definitely like to know more about that. That sounds fantastic, Catherine, and I'll get in touch with you afterwards. and follow-up conversations around that, because I'm having similar conversations with lots of people around Mid Wales. I live in Mid Wales as well, so there's a lot of concern around housing and the cost of housing, especially in affordability.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So we've got some contacts there. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for putting your contacts down on the chat. If people don't know, you can save the chat to your computer by clicking on the ellipsis, and then it says more at the bottom of the chat. And then it allows you to save chat, and that will go to a file on your computer. And I've just lost the chat, so I don't know what I've done there. There it is. So yes, and it will appear in your computer under, oh, I forgot documents, I think. It'll go into a Zoom folder and documents. But if you're struggling with time to copy and paste all those different emails, you can save the chat, and that will have all the different questions that have been raised as well. I think, I don't know if we've got any more questions in the, Cara mentioned retrofit self-build. I don't know if you want to come in on that, Cara. Cara Wilson from Pembrokeshire.
Oh, sorry, it was just a little snippet because we used, it was my husband that did all the self-build, of course. I was looking after the kids, but typically, he used Wood Knowledge Wales and went to a lot of their training seminars. It was in about 2005, 7, something like that. And we built, we had a typical tiny mountain cottage, and that was, you know, cold and small, and we wrapped it around with highly insulated timber frame, timber clad extensions, and we were determined to use local timber and the small kind of individual trader sawmills. And it was really hard for Steve to manage that, and also to do all the air drying, all of that. We were trying to do it as environmentally as possible, which was not the easy option at all. But Wood Knowledge Wales was very helpful. But just to point out, there just needs to be a lot more kind of support and help for that kind of thing. Steve, he does do presentations. He could, you know, if it's of interest, actually, it might be useful. I don't know, I haven't come to this group before, but it might be useful he could explain more about it.
And thanks, Cara. Yeah, well, I'll get in touch with you afterwards about that, and maybe we can have some sort of self-build session, which we haven't done yet as a network meeting.
Well, it might be interesting because the technique or the designs he developed from that ended up being sort of one-off, or not one-off, but new design, because he wanted to do a breathable building that was timber, because before he'd worked with stone and clom, packed earth. So he was used to doing breathable buildings and working with lime. So he developed a new system, which was a breathable timber building. And it was, his designs were then taken by T Solar. I don't know if you know about that, but in Pembrokeshire, they do social housing, you know, at scale, several houses in a development for local needs housing. And so they copied that, they came and saw Steve, and they basically used a lot of his design to develop their T Solar designs, which is now being on several developments around South Wales.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cara. That's great. It sounds really interesting. I'd love to know more about that.
Alan, could I just say something about the first
please.
question that we had? Just to sort of say how, you know, in terms of how can we do this, where the industry at the moment is really concerned with continuing what they're doing now, is that, you know, I think it's the responsibility of community woodlands in general, or if you're thinking about buying land and creating a new woodland, is that really that anything you do now is going to be, you know, it's not going to come into effect for at least another 50 years or even 100 years, depending on doing it. So it's, even though we live in an age where we want everything now, and so we're looking at resources and we're thinking, how can we use them now? But actually, you know, the way woodlands work, you know, it's the first thing that I really hit on was the epiphany when I was doing my apprenticeship, was the oak that was left for me by someone 100 years ago, and the oak that I would leave for somebody else in 100 years. So, you know, even though we're in this fast-paced society, we've got to think about well, you know, we can't rush these things. These materials aren't going to appear overnight, but we can start planting now. We can start thinking about things that we're going to need for the future. And I think that's one of the duties of community woodlands, is to think about that future and to work on that timescale that woodlands work, rather than how fast our society wants it to work. And I think that's quite a key thing. And as a builder, I see the industry using sort of wood that is very fast grown, Sitka and spruces and things like that. It doesn't have a lot of strength, but it is used within the building trade. It can have value in that way. But these things are going to take time. You know, the cultural shifts around farming and land use, they're obviously coming to a head now. We've had Brexit, the farming packages for subsidies are all changing. So it's now is to make that sort of impetus to sort of say, okay, well, we need to look at different avenues, or we need to plant this, or we need to plant that. I think the willow idea, you know, the willow is great. I mean, it has more uses than anything. We're using it in a wet system to deal with sewerage and grey water and things like that. But it's going to take time. And I think, you know, it's making those sort of inroads now for the future when we're really going to need it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jamie, for that contribution. I couldn't agree more with all of that. I don't know whether any of the other speakers would like to come back on any of the points that have just been made over the last 5 or 10 minutes. If you've got anything you'd like to add, please do now.
Maybe just to say that we'll be exploring some of these things at our gathering. So that's coming up next month. So if you're inspired by, you know, woodlands and community and the stuff that we've been talking about, we'll have a bit more time to kind of explore different aspects of this. So you'll be really welcome to come along to that. And I put my contact details in the comments. So yeah, just get in touch.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anna. There's also a link there. I've put a link into the festival on the chat as well to the Eventbrite.
Thanks, Anna.
The booking Eventbrite through Eventbrite. I've also put a list of different woodland organisations that I know are involved in this kind of similar area or related in there too, and who couldn't be here today. And T-Croyd as well are doing a lot of free training sessions that you can tap into. I put their website up as well. I think they're doing like accredited training for different individuals and groups now. So I think it's well worth having a look at their website and seeing what you can access. So I'll invite the speakers one more time. If they have anything they'd like to add now, just let me know, unmute your mics and come back on. And if not, and I'll ask if there's any final questions, and then we should probably close because we will have to get on and get our lunches and whatnot. Okay, brilliant. That seems to be it from everybody. Thanks so much to all the speakers and to all of you attendees for coming along. I'm sorry it's gone on a bit beyond the time, but there's so many interesting things to talk about with woodland and community housing, and we've had a request to do a follow-up session at some point in the future, and I think we should definitely do that. That maybe would be in the spring now, and bring different speakers along with different perspectives and different things they're doing, and then we'll maybe make it a bigger session so we can have more time for chat and networking amongst the participants as well. But that's been fantastic. Oh, Katie Morgan has a hand up. Sorry, I couldn't see you, Katie. Would you like to ask something? Are you still there, Katie? Katie Morgan? If you unmute and... I can't actually see her now. I think Katie might have gone. Oh, no, Katie, you are still there.
Been up for a while, Alan, so I'm not sure if she might have done it by mistake.
Maybe the question has already gone, or... Okay, brilliant. I think that's everything, and I just say where will the recording be, please? Yes, we're making a recording, and we have a YouTube channel called Communities Creating Homes, and it will be up on there very shortly, bandwidth allowing. Yes, because we're all working from home now, but yeah, it should be there soon, and we will probably send out a follow-up email with that link and maybe a feedback form or something like that. Brilliant, and I've got a lot of people to contact as well after the meeting who've made contributions, and I'll be in touch with you all soon. So yeah, Jochen Baudian, thank you everybody for coming. It's really nice to see you all here, and happy Halloween. This is what you should be doing the rest of the afternoon.
Hwyl.
Hwyl. Hwyl.
Diolch yn fawr. Hwyl fawr.
Diolch.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Dave.
Thank you.
My mute's working now. I've got my mute off.
Ah, Katie.
Okay.
I just want to, you know, the Willow guy, is he still there?
Steve, are you still there, Steve?
He might not be, but I am. I work with him.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
It's completely unrelated to building, but it's a question about willow. Do you think I could use it as a bent wood to make buckets and spades? I reckon I could.
You think it could be used for buckets and spades?
Yeah, for the beach, to get rid of plastic. I'm pretty interested in bent wood. And I was just wondering if I could perhaps have a go at steaming it to make buckets and spades. What do you think?
That's an interesting one. I'd have thought you'd have to line the bucket, because it's, yeah, I don't know how you'd make it waterproof. That's the only thing.
Yeah, just only for sandcastles. It's not for
Oh,
building.
okay. Yeah. No, absolutely.
I'm just interested in
a nice tight weave. I'm not so sure about spade, because I think you'd have to be quite thick to make it not bend when you but I think the bucket, absolutely. Yes. Okay,
that's brilliant. Thank you very much. You'll have to come to Aberdeen for your sustainable holidays, everybody. Thanks very much.
Glad you got to ask the question, Katie. Brilliant. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay.